not rehearsed, by the way, so I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm winging it. So the Minister will help me winging it. So, Minister, it is my duty as a Commissioner to declare to you and provide you with the necessary documents that the First Peoples Assembly is established and that you make your declaration to embed that.
I just want to say that winging it, Jill talked about winging it, she's got the wings. She joined with the wingspan of Bunjil and others to deliver something pretty special. I'm just a little bit of wind that actually perhaps can give a bit of lift to those wings. So thank you, Jill. Thank you for your extraordinary amount of work. All the team that you've worked with you, the people who, the Working Party, all of the mechanics to make this a living, breathing reality. It's a very simple, elegant thing for me to do. I'll be very happy to accept your recommendation. There'll be some sort of bureaucratic backup to back me in, but nonetheless, you've delivered this. You've delivered this, and you should be very proud. And people in the Aboriginal community should be very proud.
So just stay if you both would. I think we're going to take, ladies and gentlemen, please give both our speakers a round of applause if you would. And we're going to open up for some questions for a short while. I can't read the times. I haven't lost my glasses. They're hanging on my neck. We'll have a little bit of a time for a few quick questions. So I'll just hand over to the audience.
You're listening to 3KND. Cool and deadly.
There's a microphone here floating around. Oh, there we go. Yep. You right to field it?
Thanks both of you for speaking. It was great. Jill, I'm wondering, I know you said there was no model, particularly here in Australia, but were there some other initiatives or organisations around the world that you sort of took some?
Yes, there was. We actually looked in Canada, we had a look at treaties in New Zealand, and we also had a look in Norway, the Sami parliaments. Yes, we did. We took a bit from everything, but mainly from what the community asked for.
Congratulations, by the way. That was a wonderful presentation. Jill, if you had to nominate the three most important facets of a future treaty or treaties, what would they be? Okay, what would they be? If I could negotiate my treaty tomorrow, I would have a lot of things in it. But there's got to be things like, geez, I've gone blank now. You know, I rehearsed this. I knew you were going to ask that question. Not you in particular, but I knew someone was. There'll be things like strengthening culture in our communities. There'll be things like how can we bring back languages. There'll be things like a percentage of seats in Parliament, culture being taught in schools, not as a elective but as compulsory. How can we as Aboriginal people share our culture with the rest of Victoria or the rest of Australia? And that's what I would like to see in my treaties. When I did the treaty roadshows and we visited every prison, I asked that question to Aboriginal people in prison. And I actually thought I was going to get answers like, oh, we want to get out of jail free card, or, you know, a whole range of stuff, but we didn't get that. What I got from our mob in prisons, and remember we're overrepresented in the justice system, was there was one Aboriginal man from Gunai country that actually said, Jill, I had to come into prison to learn how to culturally dance. But when I get released, where do I go? Where do I go, especially if he's not from Gunai, where do I go back to my country to learn? So culture strengthening is really important to me in my treaty. There has to be land, there has to be compensation. There's no getting around it. But you know what? Victoria's not going to go broke as a result of treaties, and the Victorian government won't lose a lot of power. They might have to share a little bit of it, but yeah, that's what will be in my treaty.
And we'll be better for it.
Yeah.
We'll be better for it. All of us will be better for it. Have no doubt about it. So if it's the opposite of no hope and hopelessness, all of the things that Jill said, there should be nothing that is ruled out prematurely in terms of making sure that we have the foundations for connection, control, opportunity, self-determination, cultural awareness and respect that permeates our community.
Thank you, Minister. All right.
You're listening to 3KND.
I might ask a question. Is that give me all right? To Jill, if there is a national treaty, which I think the government have been talking about for forever and ever, if we do see one, what sort of impact will it have on Victoria and the treaty that you're working on? Will it have any impact at all, or will it be working together, do you think? Not just for Victoria, but I know in Queensland, my home state, they've started negotiations at the moment. So will it all work, as far as you're concerned, with First Nations people around the country?
That's a good question, and I think I might refer back to the Minister's opening comments today when he spoke about how Victorian Aboriginal communities at a national level. Just recently, we all know that the Commonwealth Government made an announcement. They've set up an expert committee to design some sort of national voice. Again, Victoria was left off that invite list. I hope we have designed the model that will fit whatever's been designed at a national level. There can't be one treaty. We will never one mob. There has to be multiple treaties. And in Victoria, there has to be multiple treaties. We cannot just have one treaty. So I'm hoping we've designed the model that will fit whatever comes out of the national movement at the moment, but I can't be sure of that because we're not involved in designing that national movement.
I just want to say whatever happens in a national momentum, we'd be happy about that. We'd be happy for a national momentum. We'd be happy if, in fact, the Victorian treaty process, by protecting the individual aspirations of Aboriginal people and communities in Victoria, traditional owners in Victoria, that in fact you would only build on it. Yes. Take nothing away from anybody. Take nothing away. The interesting thing about it, and it'd be much better if this country, as a nation, had the same approach that Jill has outlined and what the Victorian government is trying to adopt. But we won't stand in the way of a national momentum. We'll just bounce off it if we can. Interestingly enough, the Commonwealth doesn't have a lot of land in Victoria comparatively, so I don't want anybody to cut themselves short by thinking about Commonwealth land as distinct from the people's land in Victoria.
Well said.
Just a couple of questions about the Assembly itself. How many members are in it? And you mentioned the tribal and language groupings that form part of the criteria for choosing people. Were there other criteria, and if so, what were they?
Okay. There's 32 seats on the Assembly. 11 of those 32 seats are reserved for existing traditional owner groups in Victoria. There's 11 of those entities. All of Victoria is not covered by a recognised group. So I know the state government, through Department of Premier and Cabinet, are working really hard to work with those areas that don't have any recognised groups. So resources are going into there. And the 21 seats that are left have gone to statewide elections.
And as a demonstration of the point that Jill just made, of the bit over $30 million that's been allocated for the funding to establish the First Peoples Assembly to this point, $13 million has been spent to support communities prepare for their participation in the process, and that we'll hopefully see more recognised groups participating in the First Peoples Assembly over time.
think we're done.
Got time for one more question if you like, everyone. Here we go. Young gentleman over here with the hand.
You mentioned earlier about the political imperative of having a sympathetic government and the risks that it could have been derailed by a change of government at the last election. What are the risks going forward politically, or do you think the momentum is now so strong? I mean, and what is the process legislatively with the treaty going forward? Just if we can get some outline.
Basically, I think how many we've got 3 years left of this government. I mean, there's still a risk there. We don't have bipartisan support, so if the Assembly can bed the majority of it down within this term of government, we might be able to demonstrate that, you know, the Victorian government, no matter which political party's in, won't go broke or won't lose power. I think if the Assembly, whatever they negotiate with government going forward around this space, what's outlined in the legislation, if they can embed that further into either the Victorian Constitution or more legislation, that would help and safeguard the process if we don't have bipartisan support by then.
I've got a final question.
I just want to augment that a bit. Regardless of what the opposition say, I'm certain by the end of this term the people of Victoria will want it. And in fact, what we've shown through the Deadly Questions campaign, which has seen 640,000 hits in relation to that campaign, anybody who's been exposed to the issues in the general community, research says that they support it. More than 50%, but in fact I think it's about 60% of the population in Victoria say give treaty a chance. So that starts with a very, very high recognition and support base across the Victorian community. It will make, I think, the opposition realise that there is an irresistible momentum and expectation across the community that they should not do what they did at the last election. They should get with the program.
So my question is, the treaty will take a long time to come about, or treaties. What do you believe that treaty or treaties will do for the culture, identity and soul of this nation in reconciling with the past and having a visionary collective future?
Okay, thanks, Richard. Look, this country hasn't reconciled the past. Let's get real. We know that there were crimes against humanity committed on our peoples in the name of colonisation. We know that. It's not us just waffling on. It's in the history books. It's in the records. We know all that, and this country has never dealt with that. We talk about reconciliation, but we can't. I don't believe we can have reconciliation until we have truth and reconciliation. That's important. When apartheid was abolished in South Africa, because there was never a declared war in South Africa, what they did was have truth hearings. They set up a truth commission and established truth hearings. So the whole world got to learn about what happened in South Africa. I mean, when I went to school, I learnt about what happened in South Africa, and I was appalled. But when I was a primary school student, I didn't know what happened to our people until elders started telling us. So no one on an international platform knows what's happened in Australia. And it's not about blame, and it's not about pointing fingers at anyone. It's actually telling them the truth so we can all move on as one nation. And I believe, Richard, our cultures can be our gift to the rest of Australia.
I'm with her.
Can't take him anywhere.
I also say that going back to this issue about what's the cost, okay? How long ago is it since the apology? The apology didn't cost this nation anything. It hasn't delivered much either. So ultimately, at the end of the day, the issue is putting into action what it is truly a deep-seated recognition of the honesty and the healing that's required, and then acting accordingly and consistently with that. If you don't act consistently with that, you do not embed it in the culture of the community, you do not have a shared view and understanding of the history, and you do not have a shared sense of how the future will unfold. And until that moment, Australia will always be doing this. It'll always be doing this. We'll never be totally comfortable about who we are because we have not embraced honestly our past. When we do, we will be much stronger. We'll be able to enter into any debate.
Yes.
We'll be much stronger. Any position in this nation or across the world will be stronger. That's the reason why it's irresistible.
Thank you both very much. So stay here. There's more to come. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the